Bereaved dad Robert is fueled by hope when he sees his dead daughter Emily alive in his dream. He rushes to the cemetery and finds her grave dug up, her coffin exposing a disturbing secret Robert had not come prepared to see. Emily. Robert jolted awake, drenched in sweat, his throat sore and his eyes stinging at the ungodly hour. It had happened again, a dream that had haunted him for over a year since Emily's death, but this time it was different. He'd seen his dead daughter alive and was very disturbed. Gasping for breath, Robert sat up in bed, unable to shake his head off the dream that felt all too real. In it, his beloved Emily was standing before him in a cloud of mist, calling out his name, asking him to help her. With trembling fingers, Robert reached out for a picture frame on his bedside table and gazed at it for a good long 10 minutes. It was a picture of him hugging Emily, a memory dear to his heart, capturing their embrace at Emily's high school graduation. As he lifted it from the nightstand, Robert couldn't help but stare at Emily's missing arm, the side that had always pained him. Emily was born with a congenital disability and her right arm had to be amputated when she was little. The memory brought tears to Robert's eyes, and after long a sleepless night, he knew what to do. Something's not right, I can feel it. My daughter's trying to tell me something. I need to visit her grave first thing in the morning, he whispered to himself. At the break of dawn, Robert got dressed quickly and drove to the graveyard, his heart pounding hard. As Robert made his way to the cemetery, he quickened his pace and a strange feeling grew stronger in the pit of his stomach. Emily's chalk-white face that he'd seen in the dream remained glued to his mind. What was she trying to tell me, or is my mind playing tricks with me? Robert tried to push the strange thoughts aside as he marched towards Emily's grave with a bouquet of her favorite pink roses in his hand. But as he drew closer, Robert sensed something was wrong. Oh my God, what the hell? How could this happen? Who could do such a horrible thing? He gasped. The ground around Emily's grave had been freshly dug and her coffin was ajar, offering Robert a glimpse into something he should have never seen. How could somebody just break open my daughter's grave? Robert paused as he leaned closer to take a look. Tears streamed down his face as he fell to his knees, unable to comprehend the horrific scene before him. Emily's coffin was pried open and her skeletal remains were laid bare before his shocked eyes. The roses slipped from Robert's hands and a lump rose in his throat until his back hit a nearby willow tree. As he tried to make sense of what he was seeing, his gaze drifted back to Emily's mortal remains once more, and he noticed something odd that made the hair frizz up on his neck. Robert rubbed his eyes again and looked, disbelief etched all over his face. He wondered if he was hallucinating, but as he looked closer, he noticed that the skeletal hand resting on Emily's chest was indeed a right hand, the one she'd lost in her childhood. How is this possible? He crowed. How does Emily's body have two hands when she's supposed to have one? Robert's heart throbbed. Without a second thought, he bolted from the cemetery, his booted feet pounding the pavement as he raced to the local police station. He burst through the door, demanding to speak with the detectives on duty. Officer, you have to help me. I need you to come with me, Robert panted as he approached the inspector. My daughter's grave has been dug up in the cemetery and there's something you need to check. The inspector looked up at Robert, unmoved by his statement, and raised an eyebrow skeptically. Oh, not again. We've had a gang of tomb raiders operating this year. They've been digging up graves to loot valuables, mostly targeting the graves of married and old women. I'm sorry for what happened, but we're doing everything we can to catch these rogues. But that's not the point, Inspector, Robert interrupted, pulling out his smartphone. Look, I took a picture. My daughter Emily's body has two arms, Inspector, but she only had one arm her whole life. Her right arm was amputated when she was 5. The inspector's jaw dropped in disbelief as he grabbed the phone from Robert's hand and gazed at the picture. This is indeed strange. One arm. Are you sure about that? Oh, come on, Inspector. Of course I'm sure. I know what she looked like. Robert gave a frustrated reply. She was my daughter. I raised her for 25 years without her mother. No, Mr. Cosby, did you attend the funeral? Asked the inspector, eyeing Robert suspiciously. Robert's face fell in despair. No, I couldn't make it. Tears welled up in his eyes. See, the thing is, I was on a long sea voyage when Emily died. My son-in-law called me in the middle of the trip to tell me that she'd passed in a car accident, and when I got back it was already too late. Everything was over and her husband had already buried her. Are you sure about your son-in-law? The officer's voice took on a slightly skeptical tone as he stared into Robert's eyes, his brows furrowed in doubt. Well, yes, I think so. Roger and Emily were happy together, but something doesn't feel right, Robert answered, uncertainty cloaking his eyes. We'll contact you when we catch the robbers, the inspector declared. There's nothing much we can do now. Right now, ignoring the weird detail about the arm, it just looks like another grave robbery. We'll call you if there's some lead, but I can't promise anything right now. Robert left the police station with a heavy heart, disheartened by the officer's dismissive attitude towards his daughter's case. He knew he had to take matters into his own hands if he wanted to get to the bottom of what had really happened to Emily. Can't just sit around waiting for the police to do their job, Robert mumbled as he walked down the street. To them, it's just a case, not to me. It's my daughter we're talking about. I need to find out what really happened to her. Robert hopped into his car and drove down the winding road to Emily's ex-husband Roger's house, his heart racing with anticipation. Robert anxiously stood on the patio, ringing the doorbell another time, and Roger answered the door, looking surprised to see him. "Oh, Mr. Crosby, hello. I wasn't expecting to see you. Is everything all right?" he uttered, his voice slightly shaking as his eyes darted around. "Hey, Roger, I wanted to talk to you about something, about Emily. Why don't we go inside and talk?" Robert noticed the agitation in Roger's eyes but ignored it as he gestured towards the living room. "Yeah, of course, Mr. Crosby. Please come in, feel at home." Roger stepped aside. "I visited Emily's grave today and I found her grave dug open. Can you tell me about her burial?" said Robert as he leaned forward, his stare fixed on Roger's face. Roger puckered his lips as he rose to his feet in shock. "What? Her grave was dug open? My God, I can't believe it. I'd arranged for a proper burial. Why would someone do such a thing?" "I don't understand either. I just spoke with the inspector. I reported what I saw at the station. Roger, we all know Emily had only one hand, but she had two when I saw her body in that coffin. How's that even possible?" I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Crosby." Roger's eyes widened as he nervously stammered, taking off his glasses. "That's crazy," he continued nervously. "I saw Emily's body in the casket with my own eyes. It all happened so fast. The funeral was simple, just family and friends, and you couldn't make it because you were on a cruise. I don't know how such a thing is possible." "I don't know what's going on either, Roger. I really don't get it." As Robert made himself comfortable on the couch, he took a moment to look around. He noticed the room was prim and proper with family photos on walls and shelves. "Your daughter's grown so big," he said, pointing to a photo of his granddaughter Ava on the wall. "Yeah, she's 3 now," Roger nodded, looking worried. As Roger continued talking about his plans to send his daughter to school, Robert's gaze shifted to photos of Roger with another woman on the wall. One looked like a wedding photo and he was stunned. "Oh, you got married again?" Robert spoke, lifting a random picture frame of Roger's second wife off the shelf. "You didn't even invite me to your wedding, huh, Roger?" "Yes, Mr. Crosby. The wedding was a few months ago on the beach. It was a bit rushed and I couldn't invite many people. Unfortunately, you were away on a trip, so I couldn't extend a personal invitation." Roger was fidgety as Robert cast another look at the picture, adjusting his glasses. "She looks a lot like Emily. What happened to her leg? Is that a prosthesis? Where's your wife now? I don't see her around." "Well, Merlin can't walk. Yeah, that's her prosthetic leg. She's not home anymore, Mr. Crosby. Merlin died in an accident 2 months ago." "What? Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss," Robert paused. "How did it happen?" "I'm still in shock, Mr. Crosby. It's been really hard for me, you know. She died in an accident on her way back from a walk. The funeral was at the cemetery nearby. I just visited today morning. I'm still not out of it." A chill ran down Robert's spine as he connected the dots in his head. Emily had also passed away in an accident, just like Roger's now late second wife, he pondered. "All right, Roger, I should get going. Stay strong. I'll see you around and tell Ava Grandpa had come, okay?" Robert embraced Roger before leaving his apartment. 2 wives, both disabled and dead in the same freakish way? Something feel terribly wrong, or am I overthinking? Robert was confused and decided to investigate further on his own and find out what really happened. His heart raced as he crept through the dark cemetery that night with a shovel in his grip. Robert knew what he was about to do was insane and could land him in hot waters, but this was the only chance to dig out the truth. "Which one? God, where's the grave? He said she passed away 2 months ago." Robert paraded through the row of graves looking for the tomb that belonged to Roger's second wife, Merlin. Finally, after a long search, he stumbled upon a gravestone with the epitaph of Merlin's name along with Roger's family name on it. The tombstone looked new and even the date of death matched the date from 2 months ago. "This is it. This is the one I need to dig out," Robert exclaimed. He rolled up his sleeves as he knelt beside the grave and began spreading mounds of earth. The earth was hard and dry, making it difficult for him to toil all alone, but Robert didn't give up. He kept digging and digging for hours, the silence of the graves shattering by the shovel's sharp strikes. "What am I doing? I hope nobody catches me doing this or I'm in hot crap." Robert could feel his gut churning with fear and disgust as the shovel stroked the coffin with a heavy thud. After struggling with the rusted hinges, Robert wedged the shovel into a small crack and pushed down with all his might as the lid popped open with a loud crack. The stench of death and decay assaulted his senses. "Oh my God, holy…" he recoiled. "What the hell? This isn't Merlin. Whose body is this in her grave then?" Robert's heart sank as he peered into the coffin. The body in the casket had 2 legs and it didn't look like it was Merlin's body at all as she had a prosthetic. "Oh my God, what the hell's happening? This isn't Merlin. That the body I saw this morning, it's certainly not my daughter's. Is my daughter alive then?" Robert's mind raced with questions. Or could it be that my daughter Emily hadn't died in an accident at all? Am I missing something? Robert's fear and disgust were overwhelming as he again checked the corpse's decaying legs. He held his head trying to piece the puzzle when suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of approaching sirens and emergency lights beaming in the distance. Robert froze and his vision blurred. Before he could think of anything else or make his escape, multiple flashlights shone on him from all sides. "Don't move, this is the police, hands up!" an officer shouted with a pistol in his hand. Robert dropped his shovel and slowly raised his hands, his mind racing to come up with an explanation. Well, we finally caught you, robber. We've been looking for you for a while," said one of the officers as they approached. "Mr. Cosby, what are you doing here?" gasped the inspector. The cops were stunned at seeing Robert soaked in soil and stench as he turned around, his hands raised over his head and eyes widened with fear. "Officer, it's not what you think. I was just looking for something," Robert pleaded as his voice trailed off as the cops inched closer and handcuffed him. He was loaded into the police cruiser and driven to the station where he was left alone with a detective in a small interrogation room. Fear crawled into Robert's nerves as he sat in the dimly lit one-way mirrored room. "What were you doing in the cemetery, sir? Were you raiding tombs, looting stuff from people's graves? And you came here to report as if you were a saint?" The detective broke his silence. "No, officer, you've got me all wrong. I'd gone there to investigate my daughter's death," Robert exhaled deeply. He confessed everything, starting with the death of his daughter and the suspicious behavior of her ex-husband Roger. "I just knew something wasn't right, officer," Robert said, his voice laced with agitation. "And when I saw that photo of Roger with another disabled girl, I knew he was hiding something." "Mr. Crosby, can you be specific? What was Roger hiding and why'd you break into someone's grave? You know you'd be charged for breaking into public property, right?" Yes, I did break open Merlin's grave, but the body in that grave isn't Merlin's at all, officer. It's somebody else's. I saw it with my own eyes." "What?" "Yes, please, you have to believe me. Merlin was disabled just like my daughter. Emily didn't have a right arm and Merlin was missing a leg, but both of their bodies had fuller limbs in their coffin. I think Roger's hiding something. Please help me, officer. I want to know what really happened to my daughter." The detective listened intently as he took notes of Robert's confession. "We'll take it from here," he said, "but you're staying here until we can find anything." The sound of heavy footsteps approached the interrogation room where Robert was waiting for the detective 2 days later. The door creaked open and Detective Franklin entered, his face grim and eyes fixed on Robert. "Mr. Crosby, it took us 2 days, but I'm glad to inform you we found everything out." He approached Robert, looking him straight in the eye. "What, is my daughter alive? Officer, did you find her? Please tell me she's alive, please." Robert's teary eyes widened with hope and desperation. Detective Franklin sighed a deep breath and gestured for Robert to follow him. They walked down the narrow hallway and entered another private room with a table and 2 chairs. Robert sat down, his hands trembling as the detective stood across the table, his expression grave and sorry. "Mr. Crosby, I want you to calm down first," he broke the silence. "Your daughter is dead. It's been over a year since she died, but she didn't die on the day you were told she died. Emily had passed a week earlier." Robert gasped and covered his mouth, breaking down into tears. "What? I can't be true. I was hoping to see her alive. What happened to her, officer? How did she die? Why did Roger lie to me?" "She was killed, Mr. Cosby. It wasn't an accident at all," the detective revealed after a momentous hesitation as Robert began to sob. "It was a pre-planned murder." "My girl, my God, who did this to her? Did Roger kill my daughter? I need to know who did it." Robert's voice quivered with anger and grief as he clenched his fist and struck the wall. "Why would anyone do this to my daughter? Emily was a kind and innocent girl. She didn't deserve it. Who killed her?" "Mr. Crosby, please calm down. We found out everything. Please just sit down. There's something you need to know about Roger. Please stay strong." Robert's head dropped, barely able to comprehend what he'd just heard. "We put pressure on your ex-son-in-law and he confessed to killing your daughter and his second wife. Those are gruesome murders, that's all I can say. I don't want to go into the details. It's just too much to bear." "What? But why did he kill them?" Robert's eyes widened with horror and disbelief. "For insurance and disability payouts," replied the detective, his voice heavy with disgust. And Roger was not alone in all the heinous things he did for money. He conspired with a morgue worker and pathologist. They helped him swap the bodies of Emily and Merlin with the bodies of homeless orphans about the same age as your daughter and Merlin. Robert's face twisted with anger as he rose to his feet, his jaws clenched. "What on earth, officer? How could they do that and why'd they switch the bodies?" "So that nobody would suspect anything and to keep the police from opening a case," revealed Detective Franklin. "Apparently Roger was a con man who targeted women with disabilities. His victims were young single women who felt lonely without anyone to love. He preyed on their vulnerability, deceived them, trapped them in his love and married them. And once everything was in place, he killed them for their disability benefits and insurance." Robert sunk back down into his chair, tears streaming down his face. How could he do this, but how come nobody found out? Roger organized all the funerals as discreetly, quietly, and quickly as possible so no one would suspect anything, the detective added. Shocking but true. None of the victims' parents or close relatives were at the funeral. "Oh my God, so that's why even my daughter's funeral was rushed when I was on a cruise and I couldn't make it." Robert pondered, the realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. "I'm afraid so, yes." "Where's my daughter? What did that scoundrel do with her body?" "Unfortunately, we're yet to find where your daughter is, Mr. Cosby. Roger said he buried her somewhere in the woods near his house. We'll let you know once we get there." Robert could barely breathe as he tried to process everything. "We're glad we caught the criminal before he could con more innocent women." Roger and his accomplices will face many years in prison for murder, conspiracy, and financial fraud. You're free to go, Mr. Cosby, said the detective, unlocking Robert's handcuffs. Robert walked out of the police station, unable to pull himself together to believe his daughter was gone. The world seemed to spin around him, and as he walked past a florist, he paused at seeing a bouquet of pink roses Emily had adored.